I'm really excited today that we have both Dr. Baxter Montgomery and Dr. Dean Ornish on with me. These are two men I have a great deal of respect for throughout my journey of reversing my diabetes and so many other ailments. I read their material, I looked at their videos, and they're really in the place of healthy and reversing diseases. They are rock stars. And we are really fortunate to have him here. Those of you who don't know, I am Eric Adams, the Brooklyn Borough President, and I just believe that we must take control of our diets, particularly during this period of time. And I wanted to give you a window into the minds of two men who have really showed their belief in how do we really take control of our diets in a very real way and our health. And so I want to just kick right into it. Thank you, Dr. Baxter Montgomery and Dr. Dean Ornish. And we look forward to a good dialogue for our people to understand and comprehend. So the first question is, there is a lot of talk in the news regarding actions individuals can take to decrease their chances of contracting the coronavirus and becoming ill. What are some other actions not being discussed that individuals can take to improve their chances of remaining healthy during the pandemic?
Well, first, let me say I'm honored to be here with Dr. Montgomery and with you, Mr. Adams, and what a great example you're setting for so many people around the world. I published a paper, an article in LinkedIn and other social media a couple of days ago called The Other Half of the Equation, which is, we've all been counseled to have social isolation, hand washing, gloves, masks, and so on, which are, of course, great things to do to avoid getting sick or to avoid getting exposed to the virus. But the other half of the equation is how we can enhance our immune function to keep from getting sick, even if we are exposed to the virus. And the studies show that, the virus can live on cardboard for, a couple days and other surfaces and so on. So it's really hard to completely isolate yourself, even if you're living at home. If you have Amazon delivering some packages and so on, it's really hard to completely eliminate that risk. But there's the same lifestyle changes that can reverse heart disease, type 2 diabetes, early stage prostate cancer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, obesity, lengthen telomeres, change your genes, and perhaps even reverse Alzheimer's disease, which is a study we're doing now. It's too early to say anything definitively, but in the book I wrote called Undo It, and in the article I wrote a couple of days ago, I presented a unifying theory, which is that these are really the same disease manifesting and masquerading in different forms because they all share the same underlying biological mechanisms, things like chronic inflammation, changes in immune function and oxidative stress, and the microbiome and telomeres and gene expression and so on. And each one of these biological mechanisms in turn is directly influenced by what we eat, how we respond to stress, how much exercise we get, and how much love and support we have. So in the case of the coronavirus, for example, there was a researcher about 15 years ago named Sheldon Cohen. I don't know how he got this through the ethics committee, but he got a group of volunteers and he dripped rhinovirus and a different type of coronavirus in their noses. And 100% of them got infected. But not everybody who got infected developed the signs and symptoms of being sick.
Wow.
And he found out that something as simple as those that had 6 or more social visits, either a phone call or a visit from a friend over a 2-week period compared to those who had 2 or fewer, were over 4 times less likely to actually get sick, even though everybody was infected. Another study that Margaret Chesney did of even more serious virus, HIV, found that 100% of men who were HIV positive by definition, that those that were depressed emotionally were more than twice as likely to develop AIDS and die from it than those who weren't. So these social factors really play an important role, but so does what we eat, how we respond to stress, how much exercise we get, as well as how much love and support. Eat well, move more, stress less, love more. Boom, that's it. And the more diseases we study, including influenza, the influenza, we can get influenced by the influenza if our immune systems aren't strong enough. But the same lifestyle changes that can help us ward off coronavirus can also help reverse heart disease and type 2 diabetes and all the other things that we've been talking about. And that radically simplifies what we recommend people to do. And it basically goes something like this, and I'm sure Dr. Montgomery would agree. You know, eat a whole foods plant-based diet that's low in fat and sugar, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, as they come in nature, as close to that as you can get. And these are actually less expensive ways to eat. You know, this is way people in third world countries ate before they started to eat like us and live like us, and now all too often die like us. You want to move more, you know, walk for 20 or 30 minutes a day. You know, you can get out of your house, just stay, avoid other people, walk around and are, you know, getting outside, getting some fresh air and some sunshine is good for other things too. You want to stress less, some kind of meditation or other stress management, yoga, Tai Chi, whatever appeals to you, prayer if you're religious, or meditation if you're secular, just something that can not only help avoid stress, but help you react to it in more helpful ways. Because the stress isn't just what's out there, it's how we react to what's out there. And love more, you know, spend more time. Many people are spending more time than they really had thought they would be with their friends and families when they're sequestered at home with them. But even if you can reach out virtually, the same way that we're doing here with Zoom, is a really good way of staying in touch with people. And Dr. Montgomery, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about that as well.
Yeah, Doctor, and as you do an overview and analysis, I thought it was very important that Dr. Ornish pointed out how we traditionally, in essence, he pointed out how traditionally we go into our doctor's office, we look for a prescription, we look for a pill, when really the quality of life we live, a phone call, an interaction, having close relationships, this plays more into our health. And I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
That's right. First, I want to say it's an honor for me to be here. And, you know, I read Dr. Ornish's article in LinkedIn. In fact, that's probably what inspired me to reach out and create this conversation, because I was having a conversation with my colleagues here in Houston. There's a small group of plant-based physicians here. And we talked a lot about how there was very little discussion about how the individuals, our patients, need to really protect themselves. I have a cardiology practice here in Houston. I see patients with advanced cardiovascular disease as well as chronic illnesses. And I agree with Dr. Ornish. Really, these illnesses, although they have different labels, have one common mechanism. And whenever you have some kind of a stress episode, maybe it's an infection or it's a life event that causes some kind of a stress, it's almost akin to creating a flare-up. So most individuals with chronic illnesses walk around with some smoldering level of inflammation, if you will. So it may be like the analogy is coals that are smoldering on a barbecue pit. You get some lighter fluid and you spray it on it, and then you get a flare of fire. So what happens is that most people with chronic illnesses, they have this smoldering level of chronic inflammation. So when there's a trigger, an infection, a life stress event, it's almost like spraying lighter fluid on coals, and it creates a flare. So that creates an acute illness. And so that acute illness could be pneumonia, that acute illness could be decompensated heart failure or a heart attack. And so the best things that are for preventing acute illnesses are the same things that prevent chronic illnesses. And as Dr. Ornish has pointed out, you know, a whole food plant-based diet, exercise, fresh air. Now, more not sure. Some people say that this is going to be the second baby boom we have after this period. So we may use up on the loving more, but certainly it's important in terms of improving the immune system and improving individuals' overall health. One thing I'm noticing in my patients is that during this stressful event, they're at home, they tend to celebrate in a way by eating the worst food. So individuals are stressful about the pandemic, so they're going to eat some of the foods that they're quote unquote addicted to. So this is something that we have to remind our patients of constantly. I have one patient in particular who has congestive heart failure. He's going through our nutritional detox program. He has a very low EF. He doesn't want to go through the transplant program. He was doing very well until we went to lockdown, and then he started eating some unhealthy food. It didn't take very much, and now we're having to give him intravenous diuretics and try to get him back, you know, in shape. So we do see a lot of individuals, and there's a lot of emphasis on washing your hands, social distancing, isolation, but very little emphasis on the natural things that improve your health, improve your immune system, a whole food plant-based diet, fresh air, exercise, and again, you know, loving your neighbors and interacting with your neighbors. These are all very important things to improve your health, to improve your immune system.
And it is, and you're correct. I am really surprised to see how much we do not engage at all in the aspects of doing those food, eating healthy. We did a video on how to strengthen your immune system, showing the power of red bell peppers, broccoli, and things like that. Now tell me, who do you feel is at greater risk of contracting the virus and becoming ill from it? And what action can these individuals take to improve their chances of remaining healthy?
Well, the reason why older people are more at risk is because they generally have less powerful immune systems. But it doesn't have to be that way. In our studies, I thought incorrectly, as it turned out, that the younger people with less severe disease would do better when they change their lifestyle in terms of reversing heart disease or diabetes or other conditions, and I was wrong. It turned out it wasn't how old or how sick they were, it was simply a function of how much they changed their lifestyle. In other words, the more they changed, the better they got at any age. And that's a very empowering message to give people. These biological mechanisms that Dr. Montgomery was talking about are very dynamic in both directions. You can get better quickly, you can get worse quickly, like his patient who was on the heart transplant list. We found the same thing to be true. And by the way, we have well over a dozen men and women who had such severe heart disease that they were told they needed a heart transplant, went through our lifestyle program really to get in better shape for the surgery, and got so much better in 9 weeks that they didn't need the surgery. Their ejection fractions improved so much. It's like, what's the more radical intervention, a heart transplant or, eat well, move more, stress less, love more? Not to mention the fact that it costs $50 per patient and a lifetime of immunosuppressive medication, which is, of course, the last thing you want to be taking during a coronavirus epidemic. So from whatever lens you look at it, these changes make a big difference. But you raised an important point, Dr. Montgomery, which is that it's not enough to give people information and expect them to change. I mean, if it were, nobody would smoke. It's not like it's news to anybody that smoking is bad for you. And so in doing these studies, I'd ask people, like, why do you smoke when you know it's not good for you, or overeat, or drink too much, or work too hard, or abuse substances? These behaviors are so, unhealthy and maladaptive. And they look at me, they go, you don't get it. You don't have a clue. These behaviors aren't maladaptive. They're very adaptive because they help us deal with our stress, our loneliness. And when people are cooped up in their house for long periods of time, it really creates a lot of stress. And then particularly if they're not getting their paychecks, or they're worried about not being able to pay their rent, or whether their job will even be there when they come, when these restrictions are lifted, or when they'll ever be restricted, not really knowing can be a really powerful form of stress.
And so Dr. Montgomery, that really—
He would say things like,
So Dr. Montgomery, I'm sorry, that really raises a concern for me, Dr. Montgomery, because now we have people who are going to receive a higher level of stress in the next couple of months, because this is not an instant 1 week or 2 week virus we're dealing with. We're hearing that April may be worse than March, May may be worse than April. We may be dealing with this for several months. People are going to be home. They're going to be on a great deal of stress. So we can actually have a healthcare crisis that is even worse than what we're facing now in the next couple of months, when people actually thaw out from the virus.
Yeah, so that's one issue that you alluded to. And I tell my patients to try to stay away from the news. So for instance, I've had patients come in that are watching a lot of the news. And so they're getting all this information, and most news is bad news. And so there's a lot of stress that's in the news. So I say, look, go for a walk. Maybe get 5 minutes update and limit the news, because that certainly triggers a lot of stress.
Wow.
So it's important to know that, you have to sort of look at your lifestyle in totality. We talk about the food you take in, but the information you take in is also important. So listen to music, songs, read poetry, but don't just listen to news that may be negative information that you're taking in on a regular basis, which is an unhealthy intake and unhealthy consumption. So these are also stressful things. There are other aspects of risk factors. Many heart failure patients are at increased risk. Patients with lung disease are at increased risk. Again, they have underlying conditions that predispose them to these ailments. So again, the lifestyle that helps reverse these chronic illnesses are going to be the same thing that help you through this type of illness, or through this type of a pandemic, in terms of reducing your risk of infection and reducing your risk of getting sick.
So why
yeah, and to build on what Dr. Montgomery said, the stress comes not just from what we do, but how we react to what we do. And when you practice some simple meditation, for example, or yoga type stretching exercises or breathing techniques on a regular basis, your fuse gets longer. I've had patients say things like, I used to have a short fuse and I'd explode easily, but now my fuse is longer. In other words, you can be in the same job, the same family, the same environment, to be sequestered even without reacting in the same way when you deal with that. Otherwise, people say things like, I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes and they're always there for me and nobody else is. You're going to take away my 20 friends? What are you going to give me? Or food fills that void, or fat coats my nerves and numbs the pain, or alcohol numbs the pain, or opioids numb the pain, or video games numb the pain, or whatever. And so that's why it's not enough just to focus on the information, but to put these things into practice. And, being at home with our friends and family can be stressful, but we can reframe that to say, gosh, I really wanted to spend more time with my friends and family. And, now I can't, I have a really legitimate excuse. I don't have to feel like I'm missing out on something. I don't have to give an excuse why I'm not at work. Nobody wants me to come to work, just like no one else is going to work. And so I can view this, how we view things, we have a lot more control over it, even if we can't control the situation itself. And so if I view this as I'm being in solitary confinement, I can't go where I want to go, that's really stressful. If you say, wow, look at this great opportunity to spend more time with my friends and family. There's a cartoon I used to show years ago when I'd lecture of a father and a son in a train. They're waiting for this train to go by, and the father's going, God damn it, this train. And the son's going, hey, Dad, we get to wait to watch a train go by. It's the same train, but how we interpret it, really, we have a lot more control over.
And that's so important.
Perspective is really important. Yes, Fred.
Yes. So it's my mother always said that if you are fortunate to live long enough, you're going to be misfortunate to experience pain. So how do you turn pain into purpose? And, we're going to always have these ups and downs. The question becomes, how do we respond to these ups and downs? And that's part of what people are going to have to deal with. Tell me, why aren't we hearing this from other doctors? Why did I have 5 doctors that told me my diabetes, my vision loss, all of the other issues was just part of the course of getting older? It was hereditary. Why aren't others embracing this holistic approach to wellness?
Well, my perspective, it's not the part of the mainstream of what we're taught in medical school. It's not part of the mainstream of the economics of medicine as we know it. And it's not consistent with, just the general perspective that we have in life. I mean, there's an economic pressure to teach something different than this. And so therefore the influence of the medical schools, the influence of medical education is dictated by individuals who have some economic gain. And that's certainly one part of it. And so you have individuals who are very bright, who go through many years of training, and maybe to some extent indoctrination. That's a little bit controversial, but there's some level of indoctrination to a certain way of thinking and a certain way of applying things. And so once you have a mindset of teaching with pills and procedures, that's something that's very difficult to break. That's one. Two, certainly in my situation with treating patients within the mainstream of medicine, there's a pressure to treat according to a standard of care. So a standard of care consists of pills and procedures. And so most of the data is supported by individuals who support pills and procedures. And so much of that is what influences the standard of care of medicine. So there's some pressure to treat patients according to that standard. So I'm from treating someone with advanced heart failure, even though they consent to treat using an alternative approach, if they don't fully follow our recommendations, then we have to revert to that standard of care. Because that's the mainstream way that we're taught, and from a liability standpoint, we're under that pressure to do so.
Yeah, I'm on the nutrition committee of the American College of Cardiology. We published a paper in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology last year to survey how much nutrition training does the average doctor get in 4 years of medical school. And it turns out it's 4 hours a year. And even that is mostly, vitamin C and scurvy and things like that. And then we asked, how much nutrition training does the average cardiologist get in 4 years of fellowship training? And it's 0, none. I went to medical school at Baylor College of Medicine, where in Houston, where Dr. Montgomery is, and I did my core surgery training with Dr. Michael DeBakey, who was one of the pioneers of cardiac surgery. And he gave me such a hard time back then. He said, "What year are you, son?" I'd say, "Well, I'm starting my 3rd year." He goes, "God damn, it'll be so much harder to bust you out of here with all these weird ideas you have." But I'll share you that I haven't really talked about publicly, that I know that Dr. Montgomery will appreciate more than most. I got a call from Dr. DeBakey about 3 years ago when he was 99 years old. And he said, "Hi, Dean, this is Mike DeBakey." And he has a very distinctive Louisiana accent, so I knew it was him. And I hadn't talked to him in literally decades. And I said, "Well, I'm honored by your call. What do I owe this?" He said, "Well, you know those weird ideas you were having that I gave you such a hard time about diet and exercise and meditation back when you were a medical student?" I said, "Yeah, I remember very well." He goes, "That's what's kept me alive all these years." And I just wanted to let you know before I died, and he died a few years later. So if you live long enough, you just never know.
And that's a great question I want to present to both of you. How did you get here? What happened? You went to medical school. You had the same training as every other cardiologist that sat next to you or every other internist. Like, why did you decide that there's something different? You know, what was the evolution?
Dr. Montgomery?
Well, it was, the evolution is quite the right word. You know, I started my training early on, and it was interesting because I decided I wanted to become a doctor in ninth grade. And there's another classmate who said he wanted to become a doctor. They made $90,000 a year. I said, well, I wanted to make $90,000 a year, so I become a doctor too. So so once I made that decision, when I got into medical school, I then decided on cardiology. So I was making these decisions sort of spontaneously almost, and without, you know, second guessing. So when I got into my cardiology fellowship, I always knew that I wanted to do something wellness. I didn't know exactly what that meant. But, you know, I went through my training. I trained as a cardiologist and cardiac electrophysiologist. And so, you know, I left training, went right into my private practice, and I just started building a very busy practice. So there was always this interest in wellness. And what that meant was that exercise, vitamins, etc. So I started, you know, a very busy practice. I started having some patients coming in on vitamins, and they were being served by an herbalist. I went and visited her and learned some information. To make a long story short, personal health reasons, family health reasons really propelled me into this area of learning more. And so I started independent investigation on diets and nutrition, and I learned about a plant-based nutritional diet. I did a nutritional juice feast and cleansed my system out and started feeling better. And so it just became an event that I learned about, and I started applying to patients. When I started applying whole food plant-based diets to patients in the form of raw juicing and the like, I saw amazing results. I mean, 7 to 10 days, patients were coming in with amazing disease reversal. I never saw anything like it in my life. It was at that point, that experience, I said, I have to figure out how to make this work, and the rest is history from there.
Wow, that is amazing. Dr. Ornish?
Well, I got interested in this originally back in 1972 when I was a freshman at Rice University in Houston and got suicidally depressed, and met a spiritual teacher that told me that if I began doing these things, that it would really change my life, and it did. And later when I went to medical school and I began reading the literature, it showed that in dogs and cats and pigs and rabbits and monkeys, you could cause them to get heart disease if you fed them a typical American diet or put them under stress or made them smoke or put them in social isolation, and you could reverse it if you change those things. I said, why should people be any different? They said, no, it's impossible. And one of the nice things about being a medical student is you'll do things, you're not fully indoctrinated or indoctrinated, I would say. And so you're open to new ideas. And so one of the nice things about going to medical school in Houston, Texas still has this kind of pioneering ethos. Like, you got this weird idea, go for it. You know, we'll supply the testing and we'll refer patients to you. It's not going to work, but you'll learn something from it. Later, when I went to Harvard and Mass General, it was such a hierarchical system. I would never have been unable to do those studies there. But anyway, and so in a series of studies, I found that people got better. I put people in a hotel for a month, and after a month, 8 of the 10 people actually showed reversal of their heart disease, and nobody believed it at the time. They said, oh, you didn't have a randomized control group. How do you know they wouldn't have gotten better anyway? I said, well, that's technically true, but how many patients of yours have you seen gotten better anyway? Well, that's beside the point, you know. So after doing a series of studies that include randomized control groups, I then realized that it's not enough to have good science, you have to have reimbursement. As Dr. Montgomery mentioned, you know, we're trained to do what we're paid to do. And if you change reimbursement, then you change medical practice and even medical education. So we began with insurance companies. Mutual of Omaha was the first to cover it. But it's very hard to get people in the insurance world to do something entrepreneurial or visionary. And so long story short, it took me 16 years. I was working and still am been working with former President Clinton on his diet and lifestyle. He's been on my lifestyle medicine program now for the last 12 years since his bypass is clogged up. His heart disease is getting better, as he's talked about publicly. But also Newt Gingrich is one of his family members. When he was Speaker of the House, got sick and found that these same lifestyle changes were able to help her as well. So the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, who hated each other, and this was one of the only things that they actually came together around. It still took us 16 years for Medicare to finally create a new benefit category, but they did. And now that Medicare is paying for it, many of the major insurance companies are as well. And so we've been training hospitals and clinics and physician groups around the country. If people go to our website, ornish.com, it's all there. And our latest book, which is called Undo It, puts everything that we've learned out there for people to benefit from. So it's been a long road, but it's been, I think it's getting easier now. I think there's a convergence of forces that, including this recent epidemic, that finally, after 40 years, make this the right idea at the right time.
Yeah, Dr. Ornish is clearly one of the pioneers, and clearly what we've seen is oftentimes when individuals ask about my program, they'll ask, is it like the Dean Ornish program? And so, very much so. We do have some common background. I'm also an alum of Rice University and did my training at Baylor. So we both have roots in Houston that run pretty deep. And our program in Houston, we have a general medical program. We have a center that's just 4 miles south of the Texas Medical Center. And we do nutritional detox program. We have an online wellness program. My book is The Food Prescription for Better Health, which can be found on Amazon. And MontgomeryHealth.com talks about a lot of our programs that are beneficial. But these approaches, as Dr. Ornish mentioned, can be applied in the real world. It can be applied in real medical practices. And I like another thing that you mentioned was that it's important to get individuals to do these things. Everyone knows what to do, but knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. And so having programs where individuals can come and exercise these methods and practice these steps are very, very important.
You have a very, by the way, I think we have the same cup. Let me see your cup.
I have an E on mine. I hope you don't have an E on yours.
We'll have a virtual toast here.
Without one, I should have brought something to drink.
Great minds think alike. But you have a very compelling story about how you were able to reverse type 2 diabetes. Would you give us a summary of that?
Yeah, no, and it was food. And again, Dr. Essie down in Ohio, and I believe he also gave President Clinton medical advice. And, I went to 5 doctors, and, I was in the late stages of diabetes. The signs were there, the vision loss, the nerve damage that I was experiencing, as well as high blood pressure. I had an ulcer at the time as well. And it was only after going to a whole food plant-based diet, and 3 weeks after, which was amazing because my vision in my left eye, I didn't learn later that it was filled, I believe she said, with sugar, or was just in a terrible state. I couldn't see out of it. 3 weeks after going to a whole food plant-based diet, my vision came back. 3 months later, my nerve damage went away. The ulcer is gone. I took no medicine for the ulcer, which they stated it was going to be permanent. The nerve damage went away. I couldn't even feel my right thigh. It was numb from the nerve damage. All of that reversed itself, and mine is clearer. And my 80-year-old mother, she was diabetic for 15 years, 7 years on insulin. And after 2 months, she was able to get off her insulin and, started just changing, some of her health conditions. And so when you think about it, it's just amazing when you know the impact of what we eat, how we're slowly aggravating ourselves. Dr. Greger, who's a good friend, says that each time the body heals with the hammer of our diet, we re-injured it again 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that is why what you men and doctors and others are doing is so important, because the information is crucial, that people need to know that they don't have to be one of the 30 million diabetics, 84 million pre-diabetics, that they can actually cycle out of this condition. And I think something that stuck with me the first time I heard one of your talks, Dr. Ornish, is that we talked about how when you look at heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, You know, I walked into the doctor's office with no medicine. I walked out with 6 or 7 different types of medicine when all I had to do was be prescribed to one thing. That was a whole food plant-based diet. That is the foundation of many of these ailments we're dealing with.
Absolutely, and your story is so inspiring, and you are so eloquent in expressing it. You're really inspiring millions and millions of people who will never meet you, but who, like me, will be grateful to you. And you know, when people get put on medications, as you know, as you just described, to treat their high blood pressure, their elevated blood sugar, their high cholesterol levels, their heart disease, and you say, doctor, how long do I have to take these? The doctor usually says forever.
Right.
You know, when I lecture, I had this cartoon drawn over 40 years ago of doctors busily mopping up the floor and the sink that's overflowing, but nobody's turning off the faucet. You know, and it's like, how long do I have to mop up the floor? Like forever. Well, why don't we just turn off the faucet? Why don't we treat the cause? And what I'm still, even after 4 decades of doing this work, what still amazes me is how dynamic these mechanisms are, and that our bodies often have this remarkable capacity to begin healing, and much more quickly than we had once realized, if we treat the cause, which to a larger degree than we once thought are the diet and lifestyle choices. So for anyone watching this, don't just change your medicine without doing it under your doctor's supervision, of course. But if you're willing to make these changes, there's a good chance that under their care, you can reduce or even get off of these medications that you've been told you would have to take for the rest of your life.
Thank you. And so I think in the last few minutes we have, in the last 2 minutes we have remaining, if you could just give an overview on, you know, it's people who are going to be home alone, some of our seniors, what are just some of the simple steps that you would recommend how to weather the coronavirus crises that we're facing?
Well, simple steps would be simply to take steps. I mean, go for walks, go for bicycle rides. I think the important thing that Dr. Ornish pointed out is that it's really a global effect. But the reason why going for walks and going for some exercise and getting fresh air is helpful because it will then help you comply with a healthier diet. There's data showing that exercise helps comply with a healthy diet. If you're going out and exercising and getting fresh air, you're going to stimulate those endorphin levels, which is going to make you less, willing to be craving for foods because you really want to stimulate your pleasure centers anyway. So if you do this in a healthful way, such as exercise, walking, getting fresh air, that's going to then help you do the right thing at the dinner table. So, fresh fruit, raw juices, lots of water, salads, beans, grains, these could be some of your satisfying foods. But eat healthy foods, go for walks, get lots of fresh air, and spend time with people. These are the basic things that you can do to really take the right step toward improving your health.
You have to end on that note. Again, gentlemen, you are really 2 men I look to all the time. You are best sellers, Dr. Ornish, because I refer so many people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much. All right.